welcome to Sandspar Where You Are, Austin Edition. My name is Chris Marshall. I'm the owner and founder of Sandspar here in Austin, and we have a great show for you today. Not only do we have some great panelists who are making some amazing things happen during this pandemic, we also have some of the best of Austin's live music scene right here with us, Miss Jessica Bailey and Guy Forsyth. So stay tuned. We'll be making some great drinks, and so glad that you're with us. Welcome.
There are snakes around my trail, a scorpion in my bed. I said there are snakes around my trail, I found a scorpion in my bed. You know if Texas has its way, I could wake up dead. Black mold underneath the sheetrock, paper wasp in the eaves. I try to keep up with the upkeep, but an honest man may be deceived. Oh, God help the child set upon by thieves. Oh, another jacked up day where I wake up already late. Won't at the front door, wonder what I run for to meet my fate. If Texas had its way, I might be gone without a trace. Well, I'll lag behind and take my place. Hot sun working on the red clay, cracks just like a chain. Hell in August, Texas, fools pray for rain. Oh, you dumb sons of bitches, hurricane. 'Cause if it wasn't trying to kill you, it wouldn't be Texas. You ain't got to fight, you won't make it here. See that cowboy hat driving that Lexus, gonna bend that wicked grin from ear to ear. You won't make it here. See that cowboy hat driving that Lexus, gonna bend that wicked grin from ear to ear. Oh, another jacked day where I wake up and I'm already late. Open out the front door, wonder what I run for to meet my fate. If Texas had its way, well, I'd be gone without a trace. 800 miles behind me to take my place. There are snakes around my trailer, scorpion in my bed. Oh, if Texas has its way, there'll be bloodshed. Oh, if trouble makes a man, I am thoroughbred.
All right, so it's time to make our drink of the night. We're making the Dry Royale. Now, this is one of my favorite drinks. If it gets a little cooler, I think it's nice to have something that's nice and clean and refreshing, and the Dry Royale is that perfect drink. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with a ½ ounce of fresh squeezed lime, a shot of Ritual Zero Proof Gin, first couple of steps are really basic, but the idea is that this is a super cold and super fresh drink. Put some ice in this tumbler here. We're going to strain that out into our beautiful lavender etched glass by Elena Botanica. I'm going to top that off with some very cold lavender dry bubbly. And here's the fun part. Take the back of our bar spoon. I'm going to take some of our delicious Monin syrup and we're just going to drizzle that over. I'm going to do about a half shot of that. And that looks about good. I'm not even going to stir that. I'm just going to let that syrup float down to the bottom. I'm going to garnish it with a nice lime wheel and straw. The dry royale. Enjoy.
Thank you for having us, and we look forward to doing this again at Sandsbar. Thanks, guys.
Oh, hello there. That was amazing. I have a huge fondness for Austin, so just hearing that music again is making me miss being there in Austin, because I was there a year ago, meeting Chris for the first time in person at Sounds Bar, where we were I was overwhelmed with the community and connection that Chris has absolutely developed within Austin, and in particular with the sober community and those that are interested in having more options from a sober standpoint. So was bummed that we're not there in person, because I love Texas. But I am super excited to be with this group here today, because everyone is doing something really cool in Austin. And I've had the opportunity in this last week to read more about each of you and what you're doing. And I know that we all are just experiencing this, just not the year that we all expected to be having. Chris and I had a 15-city tour going with Sandsbar, which is why we're now doing Sandsbar where you are. And that, obviously got canceled, and each of you have a different industry that has also been really affected, but also just so key what you guys are doing in Austin. So I'm excited to have you each here, and I'm going to have you each introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing at this point in Austin and what you feel like you're doing to kind of make a difference in this time. Corey, I'm going to start with you.
Awesome. So my name is Corey Lawson. I am a health and fitness coach in the Austin, Texas area. This time last year, my company, Claw Athletics, we were hosting group workouts in Zilker Park twice a week. And then obviously COVID-19 hit this year. And so now our business is almost entirely online. So most of my day today is working with clients one-on-one to help them integrate health and fitness into their lives, whether they have equipment or whether they don't have equipment whatsoever. So what I try to get clients to understand is that in 2020, as we all know, a lot of bad things have happened this year. A lot of things are outside of our control, but the one thing you can always control is your own health and fitness. That is at least one thing we can all impact.
Great. Thank you. TK, I'm going to have you go next. And I was not surprised to see all the beautiful artwork behind you, because I know that has a little bit to do with some of the work you do. So if you would let us know about you and what you're doing in Austin.
Yes, my name is TK Tunches. I am a local artist and business owner, small business owner. I call myself a solopreneur because I do everything more or less myself. My business name is Las Ofrendas, and under the Las Ofrendas name, I run a local market called Frida Friday ATX. We work specifically within the BIPOC, women of color, and queer community to try to support intentionally intersectional spaces. And we are an event, right, that happens outdoors. So major change during COVID has been that we have moved our event spaces online and created virtual marketplaces monthly to try to continue to support the creative communities that we are a part of, and to make sure that we are channeling resources to other creatives.
Awesome. It's really impressive. And I got to get on trying to figure out getting on your virtual marketplace today. It's really cool. Very exciting. Chef Philip, how about you? Can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here with you all. My name is Chef Philip Spear. My name is Philip Spear. I'm the chef and owner, pastry chef and owner of Commodore Restaurant in Austin. I also have our business that we began in COVID, which is Assembly Kitchen, which is a way that we have pivoted to get food into homes that would normally be in a restaurant or created by a chef. And that allows us to continue to support the local market, the local farms, and local chefs and other restaurants in the industry. And as importantly, I'm the Austin chair of Ben's Friends, which is a national organization that is a food and beverage place for people to come and discuss their journey with with sobriety in the industry, or even their sober curiosity within the food and beverage community. So I'm also the founder of the Commodore Run Club, which, again, as you said earlier when you were speaking about Sam's Bar and Chris, another opportunity for people to meet that doesn't involve drugs and alcohol.
About that part, that's great. Chris, would you like to share with everyone about yourself, what you're doing these days? You're on mute.
It wouldn't be 2020 without. I just wanted to just cross it off our bingo for tonight. Yeah, so I'm the owner and founder of Sands Bar here in Austin. I am in awe of these amazing people, and I love working with dry soda, and I just love this city. So I'm excited to hear from all of these wonderful change makers tonight.
Awesome. And I was so excited about the music. I forgot to introduce who I am. I am Cheryl Klaus, and I'm the CEO and founder of Dry Soda Company. We're based up here in Seattle. And like I said, I met with Chris. Dry and Chris have been working together for a couple of years, but I actually got to meet Chris and see Sands Bar myself a year ago. And we were just, like I said, I was just so in awe of what Chris has created down there that we wanted to work with him, and started talking and invested in Chris and Sands Bar. So very excited to be here and help sponsor this event. So what I'd like to talk about is, and I'd love us to get sort of vulnerable and talk about how this time has been for each of you. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I know that it can be very scary when there's just something completely out of our control. And I am one of those people that never think anything was really bad is going to happen. And the COVID thing started to come, and I was like, yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And to just realize how upside down the world turned has been interesting, and how I've had to react with my company. So, Chef, I'd like to start with you and have us talk a little bit about what this time has been like for you, because I know as a restaurant owner, your industry has been really hit hard. So can you talk a little bit about how this has been for you?
Sure, absolutely. The restaurant industry and restaurant community being hit hard is one of very many industries who have been affected. So, I never want to take away from other people who are suffering, because, I'm still grateful to have a business, and our business is operating. But, kind of a little bit different from what you had said. We I don't want to say we had the foresight, but we thought that this might last a pretty long time. So we quickly began to pivot into the new concept that we did of assembly. Allowing us to do that allowed us to retain many of our staff members, which was really first and foremost what we were concerned about, was the livelihood of all of our people. So we were grateful to create a revenue stream that would allow us to continue to pay. We did get a little bit of government assistance, as some other small businesses were able to do, and that did last a little while. However, as everyone realizes, 50% capacity of a restaurant really means more like 30%, for multiple reasons. The main reason is that most people don't eat at 5 p.m. or 9 p.m. Most people eat from 7 to 8:30. So we can be at our 50% capacity from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. But, without filling those seats from the minute we open the door to the minute we close, we're not that capacity. We're at more like a 30% capacity. And I think that's where so many of our businesses are suffering, because we have redesigned menus and we have redesigned our labor models to where it could make sense if we did that full 50% capacity, but we don't. And so that middle period it's necessary to staff for that full hit, but everything else around it is dollars that are just being spent with no revenue. So it's difficult in that way on the business sense, but what more so is the emotional sense. And what's so emotionally hard for this is that we're seeing many of our peers, our friends, restaurants we love, bars we love, coffee shops, etc., just small businesses that aren't going to make it and have already had to close. and it's a struggle for us every day as well. It's a struggle for everyone, and that's that emotional baggage of small restaurant genocide essentially is been very hard for all of us. Many people without jobs, many people without feeling safe to go outside, and I just that's really where we are. That's the major impact of COVID on the restaurant industry at this point, or at least in my experience.
And do you feel like do you have an idea in your head of what Austin really looks like, coming up here without some of these restaurants? Or do you think, is it?
Like, what does Austin look like post COVID in the next middle of next year? That's a great question. I don't know. I think the industry, the restaurant and food and service beverage community across the country is going to be very different from now on. There's plus and minuses to that. One plus is that it's an opportunity to sort of rebuild how this works, because there's a lot of exposed weaknesses in our industry, and exposed weaknesses in the food chain, and exposed weaknesses in the way we treat each other and the people we hire. So that is a positive from this. It's also allowed a lot of us to connect in ways that we normally wouldn't connect with people across the country that we may not have previously connected with. But the reality of the situation physically is that there will be many places that no longer exist. And there are new habits that have been formed, and a lot of those habits don't involve going to a live music show, going to sit at a coffee shop, or going to a high-end fine dining restaurant. And some of those habits are great. Some of them are growing your own food and cooking at home and spending time with your family, which is amazing. But some of it means a little bit less for our industry. So those who can survive and have figured that out, that's amazing, and I'm very proud of all of those people. And those who haven't or will not, I feel for that, and I hope that we get to make it to be on the list that does survive.
Yeah.
And we can continue to staff our employees and have some good culture and some livelihood.
So you bring up a good point, which I think is interesting, and I felt it today, especially when I was going through each of your sites and looking at that, and now just listening to this music, is for people like me who just love Austin and would love to be able to kind of get a hit of it. I used to travel to Austin a bit, but I feel like that's one of the interesting things we sort of talk about, is we're becoming maybe less regional, and where people can actually access some, access. Like right now, tonight, we're having an event, for everybody, but that's really celebrating Austin. So it is it could be sort of the future of the way we look at things. For instance, TK, I want to talk to you next, because I think this virtual market that you're doing, when Chris first told me about the Frida Friday, I was like, oh my God, that would be such a cool thing to go see. And now to see that that's actually virtual, it just means that like a lot more people can see. Will you tell us more about what you're doing, and really how this has been for you and what you've been doing in this last 6-7 months?
Sure. I have many hats as entrepreneurs too. So is that echo coming?
Just a little bit. It's not too bad.
Okay. When COVID hit, I actually had a retail space that was open. I also worked on my own through La Sofrenda, which was an artistic practice. And then the final thing was running these markets as an event producer. So I did parties across the city, and then also did these Frida Friday marketplaces. So we kind of, as the same as Philip was just saying, right away, all of those things were impacted. And we knew within a matter of weeks, like, oh, we need to figure out how we're going to address this and support our community, continue to support our community. So we started doing virtual markets within the first 2 weeks of when COVID hit. For us, I vividly remember it was March 13th that we were out at the AMAs, and we decided that was when we were kind of joking around. We were saying like, oh, this is going to be our last night out. And it really was our last night out.
Oh, man.
So, by the 15th, we were like, oh, we can't keep the trailer open, the artisan trailer open anymore. We need to figure out how our vendors are going to sustain themselves. And we started to see cancellations of shows. So a lot of vendors do live shows. I'm sure that's probably familiar to y'all too. You know, festivals are such a big part of our economy. Music events where we're going to set up and vend just were hit so hard, and the interconnections between the way that we handle events, especially within Austin, I don't think that, or I don't know if people understand how strongly connected the culture of our communities are and dependent on each other. And then ultimately how creatives, independent creatives depend on that culture to survive. So I think from a place of almost panic, we started thinking about how are we going to get the word out about these vendors and make sure that they can sustain themselves. And it was really, you know, a matter of working really hard to try to figure out the fastest way to support and continue to amplify our community. So what we did is we started doing these virtual markets, which was great. At first they were like 10 people, same as our markets, right? 10 people. And then each month they've been averaging about 40, 45 vendors per month. Wow. Now I think that the beautiful part of it is that our vendors are coming from Central Texas and also, you know, as far as Mexico, some of the indigenous folks that would be coming here normally to vend here, but now can't, right?
Yeah.
Able to sustain those relationships. And then have some folks that are, you know, this month in particular, we have some folks joining us from Chicago, some folks joining us from New York. And our focus with Frida Friday is really to build a BIPOC, like I said, and woman of color centered space. So it's really a blessing to be able to expand that network and continue to create those spaces, because in a lot of ways, those communities, we see it a lot within Austin, like the BIPOC community, the Latinx community, the Black community have been hit particularly hard. And we've seen the numbers as a result really be on the rise within those communities of who's being impacted health-wise. So it's really important to us that we continue to generate resources to support our community members when they're struggling the most.
Well, it's really inspiring how you've pulled that together, because I think it's like I said, I think this ability to sort of people around the country to be able to see this market that you're doing and meet these artists, I think it's exciting to me. So certainly an incredible pivot. So Corey, I want to talk with you next, because obviously the pivot that you've done is an interesting one, and one that people are just really passionate about working out at home now, right? Like that's the new thing. And so we talked about how you decided to make that pivot and a little bit more about your year.
Yeah, so mine's a bit of a unique situation, because I actually quit my corporate job in January. So this was going to be the year that I quit corporate, become a full-time entrepreneur, and set the city on fire. And in fact, the game plan for the company was we wanted to have the best boot camp in Austin, Texas this summer. That was like we spent all of last year planning for. And kind of like Cheryl was saying, you know, once COVID first gets announced, I'm a very optimistic person. So I'm like, oh, this will be, you know, a 1 week, 2 week thing. Everything will get back to normal. Plans don't change. And you look up and it's like, okay, we've been in this in quarantine for a month now, and this isn't going anywhere. And so for my business, whereas last year we used to be almost entirely in-person training, whether it's in groups or one-on-one, you know, quarantine hit in April and March, you know, revenue almost went to zero. Basically, the only thing that saved me was I had saved up money before leaving corporate America. And so now the biggest challenge for us has been creating better resources online, creating better demonstration videos for clients who are working out virtually, as well as just being a trainer. You know, in the old way, you would build programs based on, hey, every client had a full gym to go to. And so this year forced me to get better at my craft, because sometimes clients come to you and they're like, hey, the reason I'm coming to you is because I've never worked out at home before. I don't know where to start. And so you have to figure out, okay, without the benefits of this full outfitted gym, how can we adapt? And so if I was to say one thing that's been pretty inspiring about that so far this year is clients are starting to really dive into more of the learning process and the education process, because they really now have more of a curiosity of, hey, if I'm a client, again, I can't just go into a gym and bench press. So now they want to know, okay, well, if I'm in this environment, what are some concepts for me to keep in mind, so on and so forth. So it's been a wild year, but I think that for my business, the silver lining is, we had talked about needing to go virtual for a while, and COVID-19 kind of pushed us in that direction.
So you bring up a good point of, this is a question, I know I sent you guys the questions ahead of time, but I'm, like I said earlier, I might, because you brought up a point about inspiration, and I think that, and TK, as you sort of talked about it, you can feel like you're alone in all of this as an entrepreneur a lot of times, and this is really can be really difficult. So I guess I would love to hear from you guys, what have you done to draw inspiration during this really difficult time? Like, what has made you feel good and helped you move and pivot, right? Because we can't just kind of feel sorry for ourselves. We actually have to move and pivot. And it's like I used to say, there's no crying in entrepreneurship, even though I do it all the time. But so, Corey, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Where do you draw inspiration?
So I think Philip made a really good point about how he has friends in the restaurant business and kind of seeing other people's journeys. For me in the fitness business, I have mentors who are years ahead of me who own physical gyms. And so like I hate to say it and hated to watch it happen, but I saw people who, again, were years ahead of me, had been doing their crafts for a long time and are really good at the craft of coaching fitness, but they have overhead of a physical gym. And so part of my inspiration was, hey, sure, this isn't an ideal situation, but how bad can I really feel for myself when at least I don't have to pay rent at, an actual physical facility. So that was part of my inspiration. And then two, it was kind of, okay, taking it as a bit of a challenge in a way too. Like for me, my background was in sports and athletics. And so for me, as scary as especially those early months were, there was still an element of, okay, well, my God, if we can get through this year, sky's the limit when it comes to 2021, 22, and then so on and so forth. So it was a combination for me of looking at it as a challenge, but then also having perspective on there are other people who've worked just as hard, if not harder than I have. And they were just a few years ahead of me in the fitness industry. They had physical gyms, and that created way greater obstacles for them than what I have to deal with.
Great. Chris, I'm going to call on you. What's inspired you this year?
I think it's watching the Austin community coalesce and work together. There's a lot of things that are still to be corrected and made right in this city. But one thing that I have seen is that smaller pockets of people are getting together in community, and it's virtual, but it's still community. I'm also really inspired by the members of our own Sandspar community finding ways to remain connected, reaching out, asking me how I'm doing. Community is one thing that is growing, and I think it's thriving. And, all these entrepreneurs are great examples of how you just have to adapt. And that's what, I've done with Sandspar, to try to make it as approachable and as consumable as possible given the circumstances, and the kits, and just these, even the Instagram just kind of engagements, all that's just a way to remain a connected community. So I really have drawn a lot of inspiration from people in the community, creating community, people like TK, offering opportunities to celebrate and have fun together. All those things have been a great inspiration.
Thanks, Chris. Chef Philip, how about you?
The isolation has made us so much more connected in other ways, which is very interesting and quite a juxtaposition and almost some real irony, right? Our Ben's Friends meetings of sober individuals in the food and beverage community went from one meeting a week to 17 due to the ability to join from all over the nation. So whereas people in Austin had access to one meeting a week, they now have access to 17 because there is one local meeting per week in the cities, plus the national meeting every day. So that's 14. Plus they've added 3 p.m. meetings, which is amazing because for many people that 11 o'clock midnight hour is the witching hour. And if they don't have a Sands bar where they can go hang out, then that's a really great meeting to hit. Also in the sober community, there are other meetings that are much more accessible, not only locally, but around. And so I draw inspiration from meeting and speaking with people all over the country now, who I may have spoken with before on my own, accord. However, now it's like, well, here we are, we're on the Zoom and we're speaking to each other from all over the country. And this is what we're learning. And this is what's happening in our community. I did have an opportunity to take a road trip to the East Coast and check out local agricultural systems through the South and East and Southeast up to Connecticut and see how those systems were holding up across the country through COVID, and check in on just a very small percentage of those, but it kept us very busy, and that was really exciting and that was very inspirational. And I just want to touch on something TK and Corey both said, both separately. TK, I think it is absolutely amazing that you're able to take your physical market and put it online, and then the same thing, you were able to have those local artists and those local women broadcast all over the country in a way that you were never able to do so. And that's super, super inspiring. And Corey, I watched the coach of my gym help people at home figure out how to work out without equipment. And it is super exciting and inspiring. It really changes your whole, it's amazing how it changes your whole perspective on a daily pivot for anyone, anywhere, and anything, whether it's working out, eating, or sharing art, writing, etc. So, I mean, all of that's so inspiring. The inspiration that I'm drawing today isn't from what people are doing in other restaurants. It's what people like yourselves are doing, and the people that I get to speak with across the country all the time now, because that's what we're doing. So.
Yeah, I for sure am finding an incredible amount of inspiration from entrepreneurs and the toughness that it takes, right? We have to be relentless. TK, what inspires you besides all the beautiful art you create? What inspires you during this time?
I think it's funny because I think it just comes down to community, right? Like, I think it really just comes down to my family, and I hate to say it, and I'm going to say it, but I think at the beginning, and I think I already said it, it was fear. It was like, you're an entrepreneur. I think it's so funny that you said, entrepreneurs don't cry, because I'm girl, I wish that was true.
It's my joke.
But I think that part of it is that if you are an entrepreneur, you have to be 100% in. If you want to make it, you have to be 100% in. There's no maybe this isn't the route. You have to be your own cheerleader. And so that voice, is your driving force. And I think that was the beginning. And then also, I'll tell you a little personal story, which is through this process, I've been able to bring on my daughter to work with me full time. And that's been such a blessing. Those kind of things where you don't expect that to happen. She was already working with me part-time, but that kind of increase of being able to spend more time with my family and have my grandbaby here and watch her influence my business and lead my business too, is really, it's inspirational, and it gives me more reason to want to succeed. And then also, just to be totally transparent. The markets are not just a noble action. Like what they do for me is really they give me a community. So we are talking to other entrepreneurs every month. We're checking in with them, and I've realized it's kind of given me a schedule to know, like, okay, as an independent artist, I have an online shop. My online shop needs to be updated when we're holding these markets. People are waiting for that. So even if I didn't have that internal drive, I was kind of subconsciously, I guess, creating that drive through these markets. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the other entrepreneurs that are sitting with us and having conversations and sharing their process. So it does come back to that community piece. And we all don't want to let ourselves down, but we also don't want to let each other down. We want each other, to be, to know that we're invested in each other. The conversation I had the other day with Chris was so inspirational. And we were like, okay, well, like, how are we going to, get back in the game when we're ready to do that, And I think that that's so important, like knowing that the investment that you're making right now isn't just like for this week. It's for like, hey, we know that we don't know what's going to come next, and we're going to hang in there together and figure it out together.
Yeah, and I one of my communities is a group of other CEO founders, and we've talked a lot about the need. Like one of them owns like the largest catering service in Seattle, and obviously she lost 80% of her business in like a 48-hour period, and it's like we just talk about that need to like get through this, and you get through this, and you put yourself into a really good position. Because many people aren't going to be able to do that, competitors or whatever some of the other stuff is. So Corey, kind of what you were talking about, you get through this and the sky is the limit, right? And so I know for me, there's been a lot of inspiration in that, and that's what keeps me moving forward too. Because we had some dark moments early on where retailers weren't even taking our products because they weren't considered essential, and it's like, oh, that's going to hit those numbers this year. But it's about. And we actually doubled down and said, we're going to innovate. We're going to be doing more and more and more, even though it was scary. So thank you guys very much for that inspiration. I'm going to ask you one last question. And then if we have any other questions from anybody in the audience, feel free to send those in. But the last question I have for you, and it's sort of selfish, but because I have such a fondness for Austin, I want to hear what you Austin people love about Austin. What's one of your favorite things about Austin? It doesn't have to be a place or anything, but just your favorite thing about Austin. And TK, I'm going to start with you.
I think I already said the community is really where it's at for me. This is not a community related thing, but I love the green space. One of the like saving outside of like the community things that has been saving me through this whole process is I decided pretty much like 2 months into COVID that I was going to consider this kind of like a staycation at the same time. And so I was going to go hiking. Like, okay, I'm going to buy a Texas park pass, and I'm going to go hiking outside of Austin because I was a little bit nervous about going in Austin. And find the different parks around here, and it has been really awesome. Like they're all generally close to Austin, and even in Austin, but it's been a really big blessing to rediscover the green space here that's central, that's local, and reconnect with the earth here.
Yeah. And Texas has some amazing stuff. When I did my road trip last year in my Airstream, I went through all the back roads of Texas and just fell in love, including Port Aransas, which is my new favorite place in Texas because you can drive on the beach, which I think is so cool. You cannot do that up here. So, Corey, let's go to you. Why don't you tell us your favorite thing about Austin?
So for me, by a mile, it is community. I've lived in Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin. The difference between Austin and the other cities is the community is just different. It's a different degree, different level of community, different level of people coming together. And the cool thing about Austin is no matter what you're interested in, no matter who you are, what your background is, there's so many different avenues to create community in this city. So for me, that is by far the best part of Austin. It's the reason that I have no plans of leaving Austin anytime soon. And I'm hoping that once we get beyond COVID, that we really, really put a great effort into recreating that community. that we've always had, that community that makes Austin, Texas what it is. So
Well,
community,
I think
buy
you
'em out.
both are doing a great job, Chris, you included on this, of bringing Austin community feel to the rest of the United States. And I think that's cool. And I think this is a unique opportunity. So, Chef, my favorite thing about Austin besides Zanzibar is the food. So I have to hear from you. I love eating Austin. So what's your favorite part of Austin?
I too am from Texas. I'm from the Valley. I'm from South Texas, and you can drive on all the beaches.
Did not know
in
that.
That's a thing, especially down in the South Gulf Coast through Harlingen and South Padre. But regardless of that, my number one answer to not to be redundant, but would also be the community in Austin. But I'll go a little further on that, and I agree with Corey. Living all over Austin, going to high school in Houston, really knowing a lot of the states. Living all over Texas, going to high school in Houston, and living all over the state at different times. And I've been in Austin since '93. I have learned that the communities are so strong here all over it, whether it's skateboarding, BMXing, food, the sober community, runners, cyclists, so many things. The only thing we really lack on are arts. And that's the actual visual arts, but we're growing and we're getting better, and there's money going into that. But regardless of that, the food community is super, super strong. It is becoming more and more diverse every year, which is exciting. There is so much amazing food here. I cannot wait to continue watching the diversity in the food grow, and the diversity in the people who are opening restaurants and what they're bringing and what cultures are coming to Austin. My favorite food city is actually Houston, but Austin's got an amazing representation. I just want to say that compared to the rest of Texas, there is an openness here and an inclusive. I feel like, we still have a ways to go, don't get me wrong, but comparative to many places around us, there's an inclusiveness here that really runs through and stands apart from the rest of Texas. And I embrace that and really love that. And that's one of the things that's kept me in Austin for so long.
That is awesome to hear. And now when I come next, I'm going to let you know so you can, first I'm come eat the Commodore, but we're some your other favorites as well. So.
Oh yeah, so many.
We're friends now, buddy. So I'm going to be counting on it.
Awesome.
Chris, will you just share with us your favorite part of Austin?
Well, I'm not going to say community, even though that absolutely be my answer, because I love, communities and building community. But I think for me, it's the idea that anything is absolutely possible here. There's a spirit here that exists, I think, in every corner of this city, where if you have a dream, you can make it happen. I don't know how many people I've ran into that are entrepreneurs, or they have a side hustle, or they have a business, or they're making earrings. And there's just something about this city that just supports ideas, big and small, that supports that spirit. Maybe it's, the fact that we have a lot of transient, people coming in and out of Austin all the time. Maybe it's the fact that really a handful of people were actually born here and everyone just moved here. There's this idea of opportunity that I think is uniquely Austin and uniquely American. And that's what I love most about this place, is that anything feels like it's possible in Austin, Texas.
And that is absolutely true, Chris, because now that's a nice segue to me to be able to tell my Lyle Lovett story. So dreams do come true in Austin. My favorite human in the entire world is Lyle Lovett. I think he is a freaking genius. All I've ever wanted to do is meet him. When I was in Austin, he came and sat down at the table next to me at Guero's. I'm just saying. All I ever wanted to do was meet Lyle, and that happened in Austin. So I just want to thank all of our panelists and our incredible musicians today. It is so fun to get a piece of Austin out. I have missed Austin so much, and just have this tonight has meant the world to me. And I want to thank you guys for your relentlessness, your hard work, and how much you care about this community, and making sure that your businesses are actually really supporting the community and making people feel better. So you're feeding their soul with your art, you're feeding their bodies with your amazing food, and you're keeping them healthy. And Chris, you're doing such an incredible job with that, building that community for people who would like a sober space. So I feel really inspired going into this weekend by all of you, and I really appreciate all of your time tonight, and to those that joined us. So thankful to have all of you here, and I hope that everyone leaves feeling inspired. And thank you guys again, and I hope you all have an incredible weekend, and hope to see you at the next Sandsbar Where You Are event in October. Thank you.